July the 14th. Joe and Mika have the morning off. We've got Mike Barnicle and Republican campaign strategist and MSNBC political contributor Rick Tyler. Donnie Deutsch and senior politics reporter at USA Today, Heidi Przybyla, still with us. And joining the conversation now from Washington, NBC News intelligence and national security reporter Ken Dilanian. Ken, let me start with you and just kind of walk us through this reporting again step by step. We now have our first reaction, not from the White House, but from Donald Trump Jr.'s camp, as we heard there.
That's right, Willie. I think this just adds another layer of intrigue to this mysterious meeting, you know, there's a real disconnect between the promise in the email from Goldstone about what Emin Al-Galeroff and his father said they had on Hillary Clinton. It seemed very significant. And then what we're learning about this meeting and what was said in the meeting. Now, this Russian-American lobbyist who accompanied the Russian lawyer to the meeting, you know, it's not clear what the impact of that is, but it will certainly be of interest to investigators, just because it wasn't disclosed and now we're learning new information about it. But, you know, according to the lawyer in her comments to NBC News, they were talking about this set of sanctions under the Magnitsky Act, which goes to this whole Russian adoption issue. And they didn't really have significant derogatory information about Hillary Clinton. And so we still don't understand why, you know, this email very explicitly promised derogatory information, and then it doesn't seem to have been delivered. And of course, what current and former intelligence officials are telling us is that this looks like a classic dangle from Russian intelligence. They wanted to see, you know, whether the Trump team would respond favorably to this gesture, whether they would take such a meeting with a promise of derogatory information from the Russian government. And, you know, in fact, they did take a meeting. They brought senior officials to the meeting.
And Ken, Don Jr. did he did the interview with Sean Hannity the other night. He put out the emails himself. He's talked extensively about this. At no time did he mention a fifth person sitting at the room. What do you make, having reported this story out as part of our NBC News investigative unit, of the initial response from Don Jr.'s camp that this guy was just a friend of the Russian attorneys, that he asked, are you Russian government? He said no. We took him at his word. What do you make of the response this morning? Well,
I mean, you have to evaluate it in the context of the responses all along, which have changed, you know, continually. You know, Don Jr. started out talking about this as only a discussion about Russian adoption, and then he acknowledged that it was a little bit more than that, and then the emails. And so it's hard to evaluate whether that's actually the case. It's very possible that they just knew this man as a friend of the lawyer and weren't aware of his background. That's possible. I'm not ruling that out. But other things are also possible, and I think that's exactly what, you know, Bob Mueller and the House and Senate investigators are going to be asking.
Ken, the fifth person in the room, is he Russian? Is he American? Is he an American born in Russia and now has American citizenship? Let's flesh this out.
Exactly. It's the latter, Mike. As we understand it, he was born in Russia, served in the Soviet military in a job that involved counterintelligence, emigrated to the U.S., got U.S. citizenship as a dual national, and works as a lobbyist on various different sides of issues, has lobbied on issues near and dear to the heart of the Russian government, but has also lobbied on the other side of things.
And how much do we know, or how much did you find out about what Donald Trump Jr. knew about this man?
Well, that's the mystery. I mean, we know what his lawyer says, which is that he knew very little. That's their account. We don't have anything that contradicts that. But it's, again, you know, many people are finding it hard to imagine that Donald Trump Jr., Paul Manafort, Jared Kushner would take this meeting at a time when their candidate had just secured the nomination for you know, to be president of the United States, Republican nomination, with these people, these Russians and Russian Americans they knew very little about.
Does he live in the Washington area, the New York area? Do we know where he lives?
I guess I have to be a little careful because of sourcing agreements about how I describe him further, Mike.
Okay.
Ken, what business would he have being in that room? You know, he said the statement we got from Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyer is that he may have been a friend of Veselnitskaya, the attorney who we already knew was in the room. Can you confirm that, a friend of hers?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. And you know, we know that Veselnitskaya was lobbying on the Magnitsky Act, which is the set of sanctions directed at Russians over human rights violations. She believes that it is based on a fraud, that there are fundamental questions about the case that led Congress to pass the Magnitsky Act. And she is trying to get everybody who will talk to her to take another look at this case and this person may have been supporting her in that effort.
Rick, what would be typical vetting for a meeting like this? I mean, you've said you wouldn't take the meeting in the first place, and most people say they would have, called the FBI the minute they got an email like the one Don Jr. got. But wouldn't you look into the background of whoever this fifth person was in the room, that in fact he was a former Soviet counterintelligence officer?
When there was a promise, which Don Jr. was aware of, he said, "I love it," that the idea was